Hey, it's Joel, and before we get started, I'm calling this a vlog, and I'm calling it the Patreon problem. There isn't a technical glitch with Patreon per such, but I've noticed something in the way of how creators support other creators via Patreon, and it bugs me. And I thought I'd let you know and reach out to you, the audience, and see if you have any suggestions. I also have my laptop right here because I wrote down some things and I don't want to miss any points, so I can refer to them. First, let's talk about Patreon. Patreon is like crowdfunding for artistic endeavors. It's for content creators to be able to source some sort of revenue from an audience that wants to support them. I like to think of it as the cable bill, almost. You have people that watch creators on YouTube. Let's say you subscribe to 20 different creators on YouTube and you like all of them and you want to help those creators continue their artistic endeavors. So you throw each of those creators a buck or so via their Patreon accounts. And essentially, if that's all you watch, then your Patreon support of creators is your cable bill. And that's kind of great because rather than going to Comcast or Xfinity or any other cable or satellite TV provider, it's going to the people actually creating the content. The way Patreon works is there are 3 different fees. The first one is the Patreon fee. Patreon takes 5% of any processed payments. So as an example, if you give me $1 via Patreon, Patreon is going to take 5% or a nickel from that payment once it's charged to you. There's also a payment processing fee, and the Patreon charges the processing fee for the payments depending on the payment processor they use. Historically, on my account over the last 12 months, the processing fee has been roughly 5.5%. That's in addition to the Patreon 5%. So if you support me with $1, then Patreon takes 10.5% or 10.5 cents out of that dollar that you're supporting me with. Finally, there's a payout fee. Patreon charges 1% of the payout, capped at $20 if you pay out to PayPal. If you as a creator have $100 in Patreon funds, then pulling that out, going to a PayPal account, Patreon charges you, well, 1% or $1 in that case. However, if you withdraw funds through Stripe, which lets you do an electronic transfer to a bank account, they charge 25 cents, no matter the size. And that's what I do, just so you know. But here's where it gets a little iffy, and I'd like to hear your feedback on this. In the 3D printing creator world, such as where myself and Maker's Muse and Tom and 3D Maker Noob and tons of other people exist, it's common practice for us as creators to support each other. And right now, I'm going to use Angus over at Maker's Muse as an example. I support Maker's Muse with $1 a month as a way of supporting through Patreon. Angus over at Maker's Muse then supports me via Patreon for $1 a month. It's kind of nice because I'm saying, hey, you know what? I support your efforts as a content creator. I know what you're going through. Here's $1. And I assume he's thinking the same when he throws me $1 every month as well. However, because we're both content creators and because we both exist on Patreon, we're essentially swapping dollars. But we're swapping dollars and Patreon is taking 10.5% of each of those dollars. So for me to support Angus and to show Maker's Muse that I support his efforts financially, it doesn't make sense for me to use Patreon because it's actually not giving Angus any benefit and Patreon is just making money from the exchange. So in the end, I want to show support for the creators that I want to support. And I know that Patreon is the big way of doing that, but it makes no sense for creators to cross support using Patreon for the same dollar amount because all Patreon is doing at that point is making money. And for what? There's no added benefit to Angus or myself by showing each other support. Patreon is just making money from our attempt to support each other. All right, at this point, I want to leave you with this question. What are your thoughts on this? I hope I've laid it out in a way that you understand, and I'm curious what you think of this situation. Do you think Patreon has the full right to take whatever money they want? Or do you think that Patreon needs to establish some way of allowing creators who support other creators a way of being able to keep more of the money. I don't know if you have other problems with Patreon, or if you use the service, or if you don't use the service, but I thought this was an interesting situation and I wanted to make sure you knew about it. That's it for the vlog. I'm gonna close up my laptop, and I think it's ice cream o'clock. So we'll see you on the next one.